we're still here, we're still alive, and we're still showing up for the human experience, no matter how messy, chaotic, confusing, or beautiful it is. And it is so fitting in this cold December day in Canada, where I am coming to you from, to be putting together the conversation I had with Anto, my wonderful friend who I am learning so much more about as time goes on. And what I want to say is today's conversation is a conversation. I know that it's really important to me and to you that I bring forward education, history, different things that help us understand death and grief. Today's conversation is really about two humans talking. And that's also one of my goals is that through these conversations, you feel inspired and encouraged to have conversations of your own. So today with Anto, who is an artist of many kinds. He is a writer, he's an entrepreneur, he is a comedian. He also is a incredible spoken word performer. I'm so excited that he is here, and I'm so excited that you are going to listen to this conversation with us. I like to start the conversations by asking, when was the first time in your life that you became aware of death, that death was something that we're here and then we're not, whether it was a person or an animal or even the cycle of life in some natural way? Can you remember when death sort of showed up?
Hmm. Well, I think that I became aware of it, but it didn't impact me very much when we ended up having a couple of pets. It was specifically like gerbils, and we just treated them not well. So it's like when they died, I think I got aware of it, but it didn't impact me emotionally in a way where I think it was lasting in a really intense way. I think the first time that that really happened was when my gongong, my grandfather, when he passed away. That was really intense because he was the first person in my family that passed away that I was quite overwhelmed with emotion, and my family didn't really know how to talk about it. And I think that in Chinese culture, there's a lot of stigma, I think, to talk about your emotions and to talk about um, the realness of it. They wanted us to just go along and then just be kind of done with it, right? And I think that there was something that it hit us about how real it got when he passed because he was like the patriarch of our family, and so he had five daughters. So my mom was one of them, and so we always gathered at his home, and he had a restaurant, and so we all would like get lots of food there and dine together. And they would always be playing mahjong. And then us kids were like playing mahjong downstairs or playing video games. And so he was such an important person in my life. And even when I was 4 and 5 years old, I actually lived with my gong gong as well. And he was the first man that showed emotion. And which was also what I think was the hardest for me was that he was so actively doing his best to share his emotions and hold space and hold me with like love and care. And then when he passed away, it felt like nobody else really knew how to hold that. And so I think that was when I was first not only aware of it, but it impacted me really intensely. And yeah, it challenged me a lot. I was 21 at the time, and I honestly felt so like I was thrown back into like my 4 and 5 year old self, just like feeling like this loss or even to a certain extent even abandonment of sorts because it was like I felt really like I didn't know who to speak to about this or any of that stuff. So yeah, I think that was the biggest challenge was and to this day I would say that that's still the biggest painful death in my life as well still. So yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Is it fair to say that you feel like your identity was sort of like attached to him and his position in your life?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, he impacted me in a really deep way. So, like, I lived with him when I was 4 and 5, and I saw how he impacted me and the way in which he treated, especially a lot of the girl cousins that I had, as well as my sister. The way in which he was so gentle and soft with them, I'd never seen from a man before. And so I actually ended up going to school for early childhood education because he was such a great impact on me. And I was like, oh, my age when I was with him is actually studied to be the most impacted age by influences and like learning things and so 4 to 6, right? So knowing that, I knew how important it was to have like a really strong male figure in your life. And so I ended up doing that as well. From 17 to 21, I went to university for early childhood education. And right when I graduated, that was when he passed away. So it was like very intense to see so much of myself in him, but it was also like his impact on me was just so great that I think even to this day I think about and talk about him quite often as well still. So yeah.
Yeah, one of the things that I always feel is, there's more things I wish I could have said. And also, as we continue to grow, there's new things that we couldn't have shared because we didn't have that awareness
Hmm.
yet. Do you think he knew the impact that those younger years had on you? I mean, obviously, you went into this for school. Like, did you tell him that that's why you were doing it?
Yeah, I don't think that, no, I never really, I don't think I was even fully aware of that level of impact in terms of going to school for early childhood education because of him. I think that that took me a long time to like process that. I was just trying to figure it out. And I think he knew because I still remember that we always favored each other so much. Like even when I would go see him, he was the only I would even say my mom was even somebody that I would actively be hugging or kissing, and but he was someone that I would hug him and kiss him on the cheek and like, you know, pour love into each other in that way. And I think that that's been something that has been missing even in our family, because when he ended up passing away, you could see that there was some breakage in my aunt's and my mom's relationship. And to be able to see that level of impact, I think I've really done my best to be able to show up for people and been able to, even though I'm not a grandparent, I do have, like, especially in the art scene and spaces, like I do my best to be a positive male role model, but also like a positive father figure to a lot of artists and stuff who don't have those types of relationships with their families.
Yeah. I've been thinking
Mm-hmm.
a lot actually about even just having that one person in the family that is the very like physically caring person, because you
Mm-hmm.
can say a lot of things, but the hugging and the kissing and like the tenderness and gentleness and how that is when we're like younger in our family, right? And then
Mm-hmm.
someone who brought that to the family is gone, and you're
Mm-hmm.
sort of left to be like, okay, so my role was always felt sort of like I'm just looking up to everybody, but now maybe my role is to bring people together, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's so interesting. So, okay, there was five sisters.
Yes, there was. Yeah.
Did that, so when it came time for, celebration of life, funeral, things like that, was there sort of like a way in which your mother, depending on where she was in the family,
Mm.
that played a role in like the celebration or the honoring of him?
Well, that's what was so interesting or challenging, was that there wasn't anybody else who was set to speak at his funeral. And that was actually, my mom came to me and asked me if that was something that I would want to do, because
Wow.
if yeah, so then that was a lot of pressure as well, right? And yeah, it was actually the first time that I was set to speak outside of uh like a school role. And so yeah, it was just I felt like a lot of pressure, but I also felt like oddly like I would say comfortable, because I knew that I was speaking to him. I didn't really think too much about the possible embarrassment or the challenge of it, because yes, I would have to speak in front of people, but it was also my way of closing out that chapter in my mind, even though all of these years later I still feel like there's this deep impact that he's had on my life. So yeah, I ended up like sharing some words at his funeral, and it was quite like intense. And also, my mom had helped me with the Cantonese part of it, because she really wanted me to speak in Cantonese, because my gongong didn't speak English. So she was like, make sure you do it in Cantonese so he could understand you,
No
like
pressure.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. There was a lot of pressure. And yeah, back then that was even more interesting. I used to smoke weed and stuff. And so it was like we had, I don't know if you've ever been to one where in the morning they had like the body viewing, and then there was a break at lunchtime, and then in the afternoon there was like the people speaking. So that's kind of what ended up happening. But at the break during lunch, I ended up like getting nervous, and then so I ended up like smoking a joint. And then honestly, I ended up like walking back into the space and kind of like forgetting that I had to say something. And then my uncle was like, "You got to go on stage," like, and I was like, "Oh yeah," and it was even more like I ended up doing the first part in English, and then I was like crying onto the page so much, and I was like really emotional. And the page that I had was translated in it was English, and then under it had the Cantonese. But I don't actually read or write in Cantonese in Chinese. So when I was crying, I wrote it all out in English pronunciations, and in Cantonese there's 9 tones. So I knew it because I had practiced the day before with my mom, but at that point with like mild inebriation and then also in the situation that I was in, it was a bit more chaotic than I think that I was ready for. And but it was also one of those moments where if things could all go to this like chaos and still end up landing comfortably, I think that it really was a gift because it was the first time I'd spoken in front of like a group of people. But for years I had been writing comedy. I'd been writing stand-up comedy, and so it was as if his final gift that he'd given to me was to be able to actually be in front of an audience of people and then sharing something different than like a school report or something. And then it was 2 months later that I ended up doing my first stand-up comedy set after that. So it was as if when he passed, he just gifted me with this opportunity to be able to express myself. And I think that was something that beyond the comedy aspect of it, I'm the most grateful for is to be able to have emotions that I can share openly and be held in, whether it's in therapy or with my friends or my partner, all these different ways in which I can just authentically show up. And I think that's was the greatest gift that I received was to be able to stand on that stage and just share myself. And it meant a lot to have that podium there too, because then he was also to the right of us, and it was the viewing of his body and what was there, and then we were basically I was speaking to the audience, but I was more speaking to him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, not only did you then leap into comedy, but you kind of had a good start on a story.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing too, is that when I became it's so interesting because every part of my career when I was transitioning or challenged with something or overwhelmed at a certain time, I return to that version of myself and I see how lost I was. And I knew that returning to my relationship with my gongong always led me to the next stage. So a couple years ago, about 3 years ago, 4 years ago, was when I first applied for grants. And that was when I decided I wanted to take all of the work that I at that point I'd been performing for 15 years, but I'd always had a second job to basically pay for my expensive hobby of stand-up comedy that you travel around and you barely get paid or whatever. And I ended up transitioning into really taking it more seriously and professionally. And so I was applying for all these grants. And then I started mentoring. And then I got hired by this organization called Nia Center for the Arts. And so all of these different like things that were coming in that was like more professional as an artist, I was a little bit overwhelmed being like, now I have to be this more serious artist. But really, what happened was I just returned back to that moment with my gong and just seeing the way in which he cared about me and he was curious about what was going on. He'd always ask me, "Oh, how's school? What was going on?" Like he didn't need to come in with all of these answers or anything. He was just so good at holding space for us, and I think that was really empowering for me as like a mentor to like think of him. How did he mentor us or love us or care for us? And that's how I approach a lot of my mentorship is being able to be curious and be able to just feel very grounded because a lot of times artists are feeling quite overwhelmed, especially financially, to not have funding to fund their art and their work. And so to just be able to show up and be organically myself and then just be curious and just ask these questions always led me into that next stage of being able to step into strength instead of like stepping backwards and feeling like you're cowering in fear. And I think that's I also ask a lot of the mentees that I have, do you have a moment where you were able to step forward and really step into your power? It doesn't have to be a big moment. It could just be one time in school somebody was bullying you or something and you stood up and said, no, I don't want to deal with this, and you just walked away, or maybe you were experiencing something that was overwhelming, and instead of taking the step back, you were able to step forward. What does that look like for you? And that every most people that I've asked that for, whether they answered in the moment or answered a little bit later, they always had a special moment that they were able to connect back to, and that always supports them in being able to remember what it feels like to step forward. And that to me has been a really big message that I've received from my gongong. And that's so interesting too, because so much of that happened after he passed. It was things that we were doing, yes, with him, but I wasn't aware of it, and much more aware of when he passed away, and in death, was I able to receive these gifts from him.
Hmm. Yeah, it's really incredible, even just the post-death life, right? You're gonna have
Mm,
decades of your life beyond this death that is forever giving you these gifts. And
yeah.
as somebody who, you want to help other people, you want to help people with their journey. Do you, how would you talk, how would you kind of explain your relationship with death? If
Mm,
if you and death were in a relationship and I said, "Hey, like how's that relationship going? Like how do you
mm.
feel about death? How does death make you feel? Do you feel like you come close to thinking about it sometimes? Does it feel like something you reject thinking about? Does it inspire you? Like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, what kind of relationship?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I love that you asked me, does it inspire me? Because I definitely feel most connected of those three. Am I afraid of it? Do I face it, or do I am I afraid of it? That I'm very much more inspired by it than anything. I see life as fleeting of some sort. I've experienced enough moments to know that a moment only lasts for so long, and that's what makes it so special. And I don't have a deep fear of death. I feel like it may be different when I face it to that level, but this overarching fear of the possibility of it happening at any time, I don't have that fear. I also used to skateboard, so I used to be in and out of traffic, weaving in and out. So I feel like I have a different relationship with fear and a different relationship with death than a lot of people. I also have friends who have gone through a lot of, I would say, suicidal ideation, or the challenges of feeling those um uh I guess, like, overwhelmingness of life and these things, and having those very intense conversations with them, I've built a relationship where, uh if it was characterized as a person, I feel like I would, like, dap up, death, and we would be friends, and we've had a lot of conversations, and they've shown me the way in a lot of different ways. And yeah, I don't feel fearful. I know that there's other people who may be fearful of death, and I'm comfortable with supporting them in understanding that death is actually not there to create this fear or to hurt them. That it's actually a way in which to transition out of this physical life of where we're living. It's exhausting also being a human too. So there's also that consistent reminder of rest. And in resting for ourselves, it's a day is also, to a certain extent, like a very microcosm of your longer life, and at some point you have to rest. So that's kind of how I look at it. I'm also a poet, so I think of things in different, a little bit different than how others may view it, and I see the beauty of transitions, and I see autumn. You see all the leaves falling, and you reminder how that, like, feeds the soil, and then now come back and the leaves will grow again next year, and so life is like that as well too. When my papa, when my grandma passed away, my I had two nieces that ended up being born within that same year, and my one niece that I'm very close with, um, she ended up being randomly would eat croutons, and my sister was like, "What is going on here?" And then she remembered that my papa also used to eat croutons right out of the bag. And it's just these little things that remind you that even though that physical person may not be there, there's these traits and these beauties that pass on to the next generation that are coming up as well.
Hmm. Do
Mhm.
you have an ongoing relationship with him now? Do you talk to him? Do you engage in any way with his spirit or the idea of him?
I speak about him all the time. I released an album this year, and I ended up speaking about him and his funeral and how it impacted me and inspired me. For the last 4 years, I've been doing my show Intergenerational, which is connecting with that intergenerational trauma and that healing that we're doing. And I speak about him in most of the shows that I end up sharing. And I would say that I've been speaking about him for the last 8 years or so, whether it's on my one person shows or just speaking about love in general. He's one of the people that has held love so powerfully for me and inspired me to really trust myself and to not give in to this idea of having to do the 9 to 5, because he was somebody who, even though he did a lot of stuff within the box, it's because he had children that he always had to think of. So for me, I always think of it that uh, there's a sacrifice that you're making if you are having children. That's I believe why I haven't had children in this way. That I poured into a lot of the artists and people that I'm mentoring at this time, and maybe down the road I'll have kids and we'll see. But knowing that he is with me all the time in that way, and I do believe that too. The person's impact and the way in which they uh, move you within their life, even though when they pass, they are with us. And there's just these glimmers or reminders of them all the time. And also another thing is I live in his old home.
Oh, no
And
way.
yeah, so my gongong and my popo, both of them moved to Toronto. This feels less like my gongong's home because he was quite sick when he moved into here, and then but my popo, she lived here for 12 years after my gongong passed away, and we would always visit her. And so I'm actually in the master bedroom of where they lived, and so I'm just in the home reminded of them all the time. I have like you know a painting that my cousin had made of him, and I actually on my album he's actually hugging me on the back of the album as well. So yeah, I'm very impacted and think about him all the time, and I think that's one of the reasons why I think about legacy quite often as well, because I think about how will the people not only speak of me, but be moved by me and be able to continue putting forward the type of love and care and support and safety. Safety, I would say, is the biggest one as well too. That I would put into all of the work that I do and all of the connections and relationships that I have. Safety is always the most important for me because I know what it feels like to not feel safe, and for children especially to feel as if they're not in safety. And that to me has been a big part of my career, is to and also relationships, is to be able to hold that safety with strength and to not run away from holding safety for people, because I see that some people are very overwhelmed with the idea of that they think they'll never achieve safety. And so for me, a lot of times people have told me, oh, you're the first man that I've ever been around that has been able to make me feel safe. And that's something that I felt the same way with my gong, and it's like I'm passing on that legacy of being able to be a safe man in people's lives.
Yeah, that's really big. Thank you.
Hmm. Yeah.
As a friend, thank you.
Yeah.
Um, if you could ask him anything, what would you ask him?
Ooh.
And do you think it's changed over time? Like, I think sometimes in the beginning there's like I feel always this flood of questions, like
Yeah.
just like so many questions. But then like as time goes on and the relationship kind of like evolves in their death, it might be different. So if you could ask him something today, what do you think it would be? Or even like if there's like a topic.
Yeah. I would ask him if there's anything that he wishes he was able to do before he left this world so that I can help him do it.
Cool.
Like I feel like that would be really cool. Like if there was any lingering things that he wasn't able to do physically on this earth, I can just be his avatar of delivery or being able to pass on a message or yeah, I think that that's what I would ask him if there's anything. And also I would ask him what was his favorite memory of me?
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because
Oh,
I remember like at least for me, there was always this memory of um we always played cards together, and so we were playing Crazy Eights, and he had recorded soccer replays. And at that point, I just played soccer. I didn't even like watching soccer or anything, but just the intention of him like making sure that he can record like sports stuff for me, and from the because he would watch the Chinese news, and then he would always record it right when the sports part would come on, and then we would watch like these replays, and then we would be playing cards together. And yeah, it was just like this beautiful, safe space that I was able to just be on his bed with. Like he would sit on his lazy boy, and then I would sit or lay in the bed, and then we'd be playing the cards, and then the TV was on there. And so I always remember that was probably when I was like 5 or 6 years old. And it's been like what 35 years now, and I still remember that. So that's how I also knew how important it is to be able to show up for the kids and children that I work with, as well as my nieces and nephew now. It's like being able to really show up and be present. That's everything at that age. Like children really can feel if their mind is somewhere else, or if they're distracted, or if they are prioritizing something else than being in the moment with the children. So yeah, that I would ask him what would be a memory that he remembers of me. And yeah, because I'm just curious what he does remember of me.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that it's so interesting because for you, like that was sort of, I mean, around that age is when you start to really document memories, right?
yeah,
With like that full picture. But for him, it could have been when you were like two, right?
yeah,
There could have been
exactly.
something
Yeah,
where he's like, yeah, you used to always do this when you were like 3 years old and you don't remember doing it, but for him, it was just like so touching. Um,
yeah,
that's like
absolutely.
such an interesting thing to think about is our memories, how often do they actually match? Where
Mhm.
your favorite memory and the person's favorite memory
I
are,
hope they don't match so that we each get
yeah,
an extra one, you know?
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, that's really special. Does your family, like, how has your family changed since then around talking about death and loss? Um, I mean,
Yeah.
maybe because that was such a big one, you didn't really talk about it before. Is it sort of like don't bring it up? Is it let's talk about it more?
So my family visits at least once a year. We'll go visit his grave. He's in between he lived in a place called Athens, Ontario, which is near Brockville, which is near Kingston, which is near Ottawa, which is near Toronto, which is near New York. That's how I described where I lived to people when I was overseas in Asia. They'd
Yeah.
always be like, "Where'd you grow up?" And I'd be like, I went through the list. But he was buried in Brockville Cemetery, and so that's in between Toronto and Ottawa. So when my family would drive up or there, we would end up meeting there, and then once a year we would go visit, and then we would go. They call it Bai Sun, which is like it's like you go and you bow and you give like love to your family. And I think there's like 9 different graves of different family members, but no offense to any of the other people. It's my Papa and my Gongong obviously are the top people we go and visit. And yeah, so we always go visit and just like share a little bit of love there. But I wouldn't say that we really speak about it too much. We would randomly bring up like a memory or two of them, of my Papa and Gongong. Um, but besides that, it would be more so private reflection and mourning, I would say. That's part of the challenge and one of the biggest reasons why I'm stepping forward into my work now. So I just graduated from expressive art therapy in school, and I'm becoming a therapist, and I really wanting to serve the Asian men and boys demographic, because it's so seldom that there is this comfort and openness and even excitement to go to therapy. And I think that's something that I have now. I get excited to go to therapy. I have a space that's completely non-judgmental, being held, and as I mentioned, that safety to be able to be authentically myself. That's something that is difficult to find, and until you know what that feels like, and then you could bring that into your everyday life. And for me, when I finally decided to go to therapy, and I really felt this shift in the my perspective of what it was. I was like, oh, it's not this thing that we should stigmatize. It really is this maintenance thing. It's really as if you're going to the gym, or you're being supported, and you're there's this mental health and this fear of being able to share uh people our family's business. As a lot of times in Chinese families, they always say, oh, why would you share our business with everybody else? But that's the thing. It's how does this impact me? How am I being hurt by these things that I've been burying or been avoiding? And so I think that's been a big part of my, of course, schooling and work, but also bringing into my family. I really want them to be able to be more comfortable with the connecting with therapy. And I think a lot of people in my family would benefit from that. And it still is this ongoing challenge to be able to share that with them. And also knowing that we speak about my gongong, and I talk about my grandparents like while I'm in therapy too, because reflecting about them also brings me a lot of joy. It brings me a lot of reminders of unconditional love.
You don't have to answer this question if you don't want to. I can just
Okay.
cut it out. But is there someone in your life that you are most afraid when they die? And if you do answer
Mm.
it, why is there a fear around that death more than maybe some others?
I would say it would be my mom. Like it really would. It's going to be very difficult because she's had such a big impact on our lives, but also such a complicated relationship. Because when I was a kid, it was very strict, very intense, and it was a lot has shifted now, and we've gone through a lot of conversations about my childhood, and back then it was much more reflected on as I was being disciplined because I was having challenges with learning or all these things. But now, as someone who knows I'm neurodivergent, I have ADHD for sure, some signs of autism and all these things. It's like that level of pressure and that type of weight was added onto the challenges and the pains that I had as a kid. And so with that type of like and my family I don't think want to talk about it as this, but it was abuse. And that's why I think intergenerationally it's important for us to talk about it that way, because when we frame it as discipline, then it's putting the weight onto the child. And that's something I've learned through therapy and through a lot of my schooling and learning. The child's responsibility is to be a child. We're going to be kids. And so when we call it discipline, we're actually negating the responsibility of the parent. And so when I brought this to my mom and when I brought this to my parents, they were so graciously and honestly able to apologize for my experiences as a child. And so there's been this shift of the relationship I've had with my mom since that happened a couple years ago. And I know how lucky I am to have experienced that. At the same time, I also feel like it's such a deeply complicated relationship because no matter what, we still went through so much painful stuff, and we're also gone through so much healing. And
Mm,
so now seeing her as a grandmother, I just see like this shining light and of a human. And I see the intention that she had with us before, but she wasn't able to execute it. And I saw how lonely it was for her as a parent to not be able to fully be herself in that way as well. And not to negate any of the responsibility from her, but I understand it a lot more now. And so being able to think about her death and think about when she does pass is quite intense and a bit overwhelming. At the same time, I also see that, as I mentioned before, that's the challenge of living and truly living. And that's the thing is if I really embrace and enjoy life the way that I do, and I have for many years, I know that death is inevitable in that experience. Anybody who's sat in nature and felt the actual leaves like vibrating and speaking to you, and the wind gently hitting the like all of the different leaves, and you just feel like what nature feels like, you know that death is inevitable in those
mm.
moments. And that's that's what really moves me to live the way that I do, is that we know that it's coming, and that's what makes it so much more special. And I always do my best to enjoy and ex the experience of my mom as she is here with us, because she reminds me a lot now of my popo and my grandmother before she passed. You know, you could tell that she knows that it is coming within, 15, 20 years at least, the max, and so to that, there's this certain understanding of that, and there's this certain presence that she has now compared to where she was at before, where she was trying to perfect everything. Now she's just more present, and yeah, I could really see that not only affecting myself but my family quite intensely, and I think that it will be devastating to me and my brother and sister, I would say, and it's that's going to be one that we're going to have to really prepare ourselves for, and probably have to do therapy double or something. It's going to be a lot. So yeah.
My brother really doesn't want to talk about my parents dying.
Mhm.
Do your siblings talk to you about it? Have you been like, hey, what are we gonna do with
No, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely not. They also don't seem to be like really into that conversation, and I
yeah,
would love to have that conversation. And what happens if that happens? Like, what will we are we going to do? Like, one of the biggest things for me is I would want to make sure that we have the conversation about any money stuff, any of that shit, because like I know that my parents, when my mom ended up, my gongo and my popo, when they passed away, both of those situations with her sisters, there was a lot of bullshit, and there was a lot
yeah.
of stupid stuff that really, and there was five of them. So imagine like splitting everything up, and it was just like it just felt really negative, and I don't care enough about money to destroy my relationships with my brother and my sister. At the same time, I also feel like I would be very devastated if they prioritize the money over our relationship when my parents pass. And so that's why I just want to deal with it all when my parents are alive. Like, they can handle all that stuff. They make the decisions. Hey, even if they said, you know what, Anto, you're getting nothing and we're giving everything to the grandkids, if that's the decision, I would totally be fine with that. I just don't want there to be this fighting and things after they pass away. It's just like I just want that to be handled, and I don't need any of that stuff. I just the complications of that, I think, is something that I am like, there is a bit of nervousness to that, and but also like the to be able to open up the bridge for us to have the conversation about them passing, I think is also extremely important, because emotional connection is challenging when your parents don't really do that, right? Even just like telling each other we love each other, and like these very simple things that I think a lot of different cultures may experience, that's not like common for us, and we had to work so hard to get to this point. It really only came when the grandkids came that my parents started even talking about I love you and all these things. So things have changed, but it still is like I think it would be very important for myself and my brother and sister to just really be able to have those conversations. I just also feel that awkwardness of bringing it up. It's like, hey, when they die, what should we do? So that feels difficult. So yeah.
Yeah, if you ever want a pep talk before texting them that, like I've done it so many times.
Oh, nice. Okay.
I'll just be like, you know what's coming next, and my brother will be like, oh, you're gonna ask about death again.
Yeah.
So I've kind of pulled it back and realized he doesn't want to talk about it, and
Yeah.
just because I do doesn't mean he does. I think for me, it's the fear of it's going to obviously hit us hard. And I kind of want to do some pre-work so that
Yes,
when it comes,
exactly.
yeah.
Yeah.
So the other day I asked him, when one of our parents dies, do you want me to find out first and tell you, or do you want to find out and tell me? And we kind
Mhm.
of at the same time were like, we want like me find out first and tell him.
Yes. Yes.
Like
I
he
think
doesn't,
so. Yeah.
yeah, he doesn't want to have to
Yeah.
tell me about it. And I think there's because I am the very like emotional, communicative person in my family. I
Mm.
think my family really tiptoes around like, are we going to deliver it properly? Is she going to want to talk about that we didn't deliver it like the correct way
Mm.
or that it was like
Yeah.
upsetting? But I mean, I just love talking about all the feelings. So
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, I've tried to like insert it into conversations because again, like the more guesswork that's left to the children or the people who are left over, the more it takes away
Yeah.
from just grief, just dealing with
Absolutely.
lost somebody who wants to think about does this person want to be cremated or buried or what kind
Yeah.
of casket or like there's so many things that we can do for our loved ones before we die that just take away all that extra stuff that can create, challenges in
Absolutely.
families at your most saddest moments, right? Uh,
Yeah.
what are some things you think that we miss out on when we don't talk about death with each other? Not even just family, but maybe like definitely in North America, like culturally, socially, we sort of I think often about how, definitely in Canada, someone dies, you get a couple days off work, and then you have to go back to work. Um,
Hmm.
and how sometimes the reality of it all doesn't even hit you for maybe a week
Hmm.
or later. And so that's one of the things that I think a lot about is just like the structures that kind of keep going. Like just,
Hmm.
are there other things that you think that we miss out on by kind of like putting death behind the curtain or not bringing it like to the party?
Yeah, well, I actually think that for myself, my biggest reference for a lot of grief was romantic relationships before. And then when my gong gong passed away, that was like another reference, of course, but then romantic relationships came back later. And so for me, I think a lot of the learning and the growth that happened was a lot of the in between. It was in the moments when I would be just doing something normal and then it would just hit me and I wouldn't have space to actually sit in it because I was doing so much or I was trying to replace that. And so I think us not having this normalized relationship with communicating about grief or communicating about death holds us back from being able to feel the grief fully and the pain fully so that I could actually step into the depth of how intense I'm experiencing and how overwhelmed I actually am or feeling. And then I'm back to doing. And I think having space for that, I think I would love if somebody passes away, then you'd be able to have a residency of some sort, or you're able to like go and have grief, right? It would be really moving to if somebody passes away immediately we have a fund of money where we could just go and grieve and love that person for 2 weeks or something. We just spend every single day. And I think there's certain cultures that grieve for a long period of time. I think in the Jewish culture, I forgot how long it was, but it was much more extended than the a lot of times when it comes to our families. And I feel like that's the lingering of us visiting the gravesite and that when it first happens, we don't have this way of fully grieving to that deep level. And then for years, we're chasing after that. And so I think, I wonder though, to be able to, we'll see. I don't know what it's like to lose a parent. And I think that that would be a completely different level of grief and overwhelming because it also is a reminder that you're next to a certain
Right.
extent. And I think that that also is part of the weight of it or the overwhelm of it. Because even right now, there's a buffer because my parents still haven't passed. So when my grandparents passed away, yes, it was intense for us, but my parents really reflect on. They're like, "Whoa, this is going to be us next," or we're the ones who are getting to that age that is closer and more intense. So yeah, I think that that would be really valuable for my family for us to come together and be able to have some mourning time and grief time, and maybe it would end up being us all being under one roof or something and being able to um, mourn in that way.
Yeah. I'm gonna be right back. My son is calling me. So
Okay, no problem.
back. What's up, honey? I'm just doing an interview right now. What are you up to? Did I still get a haircut now? Well, I'm in an interview right now, so I can't really help you. Can you take care of yourself for a month? Yeah. And so you 5 million? Yeah. Maybe this you know, TV outside. Thank you, sweetie. All right. um, I really resonate with what you said about relationship grief. And I'm going to bring that back into this conversation because one of the things I'm most grateful for these conversations is that we identify other deaths that
Mm,
I think we don't put them in the same category as deep loss.
mm,
And it was my last like really long deep relationship where like a few months after I felt like there's a ghost of this person who's just like
mm,
out there still. Like this person is like dead to me in my life. I may never see them again, but they're still here. And it was like a strange kind of grief, whereas, I've lost family members and I won't see them again. And it's sad and it hurts, but it's almost like I've found it easier to grieve that because
mm,
there was no choice. Whereas like when me and this person decided, let's be dead to each other, it was like,
mm,
yeah, it didn't feel like a natural thing. It felt like a choice.
mm,
So it didn't
mm,
feel like a cycle of, oh, well, everything dies. It felt like, yeah, a different kind of pain and grief. And I think
mm,
it's taken me a lot longer to be, I think, more like appreciative of the loss than
mm,
maybe when family has died.
mm.
Yeah, I don't,
Yeah.
and I also like think about, is it because of the types of things me and this person did together, right? Like our bond is different than maybe me and my grandma.
Mhm.
You know,
Yeah.
me and an ex-lover,
Mhm.
different than grandma. So
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah. So I don't know if you want to share anything more about sort of like
For
your
sure.
in that way.
Well, one of my shows that I ran in 2019 as well as in 2024, I it was called Love So Far. And the show was about grieving the losses of romantic partners and even people that I thought were going to be romantic partners and grieving the hope that I had for that love of that person and being able to unalign yourself with that because the way in which I experience life is I align myself in my purpose and the people seem to fall into the direct alignment of that and interest a visual of it could be like a lighthouse, right? And I'm shining and supporting people and they're on their boats and things and sometimes I go out into my boat and then someone will take over the lighthouse and all these things. And so I think of life in that way as we're contributing and giving and receiving in that way. But when somebody passes away, it's as if they have taken their boat out of that space and you don't get to see or guide them or connect with them or love them anymore in that way. And even though you feel like you if somebody asks you, oh, do you love this person, you'll say yes because that's the comfortable and you still feel a little bit of it, but the person is now gone and you have to realign with your self-worth. You have to reconnect with the parts of yourself that they brought out beautifully. And I think until I found like a connection as I do now in my new relationship, I didn't think that I truly understood that me and especially one specific person that I had gone through a breakup with. Well, actually, it was multiple of them of the people that I went through relationship the breakups with. It's reminding me that that didn't align and work out because it didn't actually fit what I was needing in a relationship. It was we cared about each other, but not to the point where we're aligning our lives together in that way. And until I actually felt what it is that I'm in the situation in the relationship that I'm now, um, you see that there's this constant chasing after that I was doing previously, and I was running after this ever after of sorts. And now it's like even though I don't know what's going to happen in my relationship now, it's much more aligned to who I truly and authentically am. And now I'm being shown all the parts of myself I was hiding and I wasn't allowing myself to truly step into because I was afraid of being rejected or afraid that that person would not be able to love and care for me in that way. And there were parts of myself that I tried to, or I basically was a facade of sorts where I was like, no, I can be this very strong man who makes all the money and is able to support a family, and I'm gonna have kids with this person. It's like I just that was all like a facade that I was trying to put on because I wanted to be loved. And I think that that's something that I've really learned is through being, for the last 5 years I've been single. There has been so much self um reflection slash work, and really coming into my own and really understanding myself, with it, whether that's in my queerness, whether that's in my neurodivergence, whether that's in my relationships with my family and friends. All of these things have really leveled up in terms of being able to get to know myself. And I think that's really set me up for success in this new relationship that I'm stepping into, because I'm loving myself and they're reflecting that love back to me, and they're able to connect to me through loving themselves with me. And I think that that's something that I didn't ever have previously. I was always trying to play this part of who I think that somebody else wanted me to be. And I think that's part of the mourning and the pain of and the sadness, was that when I lost them, then I was also losing this uh, version of myself that I got comfortable with. And I think every single time it forced me to get to know myself deeper. And that's scary every single time. And I think that's part of what's so interesting about life, is that dying is such a reflection of this, and but living is actually getting to know yourself more and digging deep into these parts of yourself, and a lot of the shadow work in that. And I think that that's where death becomes scary, is because then you're thinking about losing all this beautiful things, but you're also thinking about how you're not living to your fullest too. And I think that that's part of the pains of this, and the challenges that I'm experiencing
Mhm.
in my reflection for it. Yeah.
Are there some things that you'd like to figure out, do, experience before you die that come to mind?
Hmm.
You've got 2 years, but not really. Not
Mm.
quite.
Well, I would definitely travel I would go back to Hawaii, and I would go back to Hong Kong, I would say. And it's so interesting because there's all this possibility of visiting new spaces, but I really do feel like those two places that have captured my heart in a certain way, that I felt so grounded and so present when I was in both of those spaces. And so, yeah, I think I would travel. I would visit both of those spaces. I would probably create at least one or two lasting pieces of art again, whether it's I do one final exhibit or one large final show. But yeah, that's probably the main things that I would do, and I would spend a lot of time with my family. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
If you could give some homework to people listening to do a journaling
Hmm.
exercise or to write a poem or any sort of, I guess, artistic expression, um, if there was like a question you think that they should reflect on as it relates to death, what do you think would be helpful, effective,
Hmm.
moving,
Hmm.
create curiosity?
Well, what I would actually suggest is more so reflecting on it more consistently and making space for that. So a lot of times it's going to be like, okay, here's the question, and then you do it, and then it's done. But what happens when you finish it? There's still some lingering things. I'll give an example. I was in one of my groups the other day. I was running this group, and we had done the activity, and there was one person who was needing a little bit more time. And as we were waiting for that other person who needed more time, randomly people would be like, "Oh, this week I noticed that this was very hard for me," or so that just random things would pop up or come up that were very intimate, I would say, that we were surprised with. And that's what actually has shifted from previous groups I've run to now, where there's this deep patience within that. So what I would suggest is, as you're doing the art or whatever it is that you're creating, what emerges in the silence, what emerges when you feel like this is finished, maybe wait a couple extra minutes and see what else emerges there. And I think that's a big part of expressive art therapy as well too. It's not just about um doing, and like kind of showing things or proving things. Um, there's this saying that my first expressive art therapist, she told me, Kiki, she said, surface is not superficial. And a lot of times I kept saying, "Oh, I hate all this surface art shit. It's so everybody's just so performative." But like sometimes you have to be patient, and what needs to be dealt with emerges to the top. So being patient and being able to sit inside of that discomfort, even if you're like, okay, I'm gonna put myself 5 minutes and I'm just gonna do it. Yes, do that initial 5 minutes, great, but then just throw on another 5 minutes. And what does that what am I doing right now? I don't know. Whatever ends up feeling right or whatever. That's what I would offer to people is that so much comes and shows itself in that in between, in that patient silence, in that waiting period.
I love that. That's so good. That's such a great place to end. Anto,
Hmm.
thank you so much. This has
No
been so
problem. Are you
cool.
okay with your because
Oh
you
my
have
gosh,
white
the
eyes,
sun.
right? So yeah, the sun must be so painful for you. Like,
I'm sweating, but you know what? I'm like one life, right? One day,
hmm.
maybe the sun will burn out and we'll miss it. So
Yes, of course.
yeah, I feel like I'm in a bit of a sauna right now.
Yeah, yeah.
But patience, right? It's sitting with the discomfort. I actually am someone who is super sensitive to sun and heat. So this has been a great
Mm,
exercise in asking myself, like, what am I here for right now? I'm like,
mm,
despite how distracting the heat is, I'm here to listen to you, to be with you, to
mm.
take in this conversation. So, yeah, it's been great. And maybe in the future, when I feel this overwhelming heat and sun, I'll just think of our conversation and some of the things that came from it. And
Well, why don't we? So I appreciate like this is great that to complete this nice and but I'm curious then as you are offered this discomfort, as you are offered this, the ending of this conversation, maybe let's just take 30 seconds and see what message or what emerges for you that you could actually share as the way in which we can close this out. Not to like have to find something, but I feel like something is going to emerge if you just sit inside of that like sweaty
yeah,
discomfort. Maybe something will rise to the top of like what it is that is needed to share to complete or close out our day. So I think we could just be patient in that. I feel something will come.
well, when you mentioned that, I was thinking about the sun will set on all of our lives, right? I
Mm,
loved when you mentioned about every day is sort of this beginning and ending, right? We
mm,
die in a way every day. When we wake up in the morning, we may have gone to sleep as one person. I had some really fucked up dreams last night. I feel like I'm a different person today,
mm. Yeah.
right? And so this idea of, it's uncomfortable, it's hot, but the sun of all of our lives will set. And
Mm,
the fleetingness, like I think the people that I feel so connected to in this life are those who really do, they see this fleeting experience, right?
mm,
You and I are not even the same people we were an
mm.
hour ago, right? I've probably sweat 2 pounds. But beyond that, um, I mean, this is what I love about conversations that are challenging, moments that are challenging, and I think you feel this too, which is what can I learn about myself?
Mhm,
What can I take from all of these things that suck? Like it
mm,
makes you it makes you when the things suck and they're really hard, there is this like I don't know if it's like faith or trust or it's almost like um I don't want to say excitement because I don't want to like dismiss how hard things are, but it's almost like there's going to be some good. If you just
mm.
keep going, you're going to get the goods. Um
I love that.
Yeah, but also, as I think about like the setting sun, I also feel a sense of like deep sadness,
Mm,
because like I am going to be sad when this is done. I really like living. I
mm,
really like life. I really want to have the whole experience, whatever that is. And I know, as we age and we get to kind of like we're around the same age, you realize like, oh, there's so much. Like
mm.
there's
Yeah.
so much. And so, yeah, like I've had a few health things in my life that really scared
Mm,
me. And I just thought, I'd be really sad. I really don't want to die. And when I was
Mm,
younger, I really did. Like I really was like, someone just take me out. I don't
mm,
want to do this anymore. I loved the dark. Um, so yeah, I think that that is death. That is the death's gift, like you said,
mm,
right? It's nothing. We're never going to be the same again.
mm.
Take what you can while you're here. Give like I think similarly, like I want to be like so used up at the end.
Yes. I feel the
Yeah,
same with that. I don't want to be like fresh and it's just yeah, I want to be just like an old just like failing body just like
yeah,
absolutely yeah, yeah. I lived the life to its fullest in that way, yeah. I
yeah.
really appreciate you sharing that and your vulnerability to take that risk. And I think that that's a huge part of and the beauty of being able to engage with others who think in that growth mindset is to know that even though it's like uncomfortable, there's an expansion to ourselves when we go through these types of experiences. So yeah, I'm just really grateful for this conversation. I feel like I learned a lot about you, but also about death too, just like in reflection. And yeah, I look forward to being able to have a lot more patience, I think, within these conversations too, because as you mentioned, you're a great resource for if you're going to connect and communicate with your family and things. But that's because you've gone through a lot of that as well too, and people have checked in with you for that support. And now that you are the person who engages with death, there's going to be a very interesting relationship you have now with it in when things do pop up or come up in your life as well. So
Yeah,
thank you for the
I
work you're
love that you
doing.
said that because it's like almost as you put yourself out like that, people start sending you memes about death. They start sending you articles about
Yeah,
like you
yeah,
become that person like, oh, Jenna, she's my death friend.
yeah, yeah,
And so
exactly.
in that way, I actually have learned so much about how people interact with death. And there's so many
Mhm.
topics that it could have taken me a long time to find on my own. But now that it's sort of been like put out there, and I don't know if I've shared this on here before, but I have wanted to do this for years. And it wasn't until the pandemic that people were receptive to like, oh yeah, that'd be really cool. Like I would listen to that. Whereas before people were like, death, that's weird. Why would you talk about that?
Yeah.
But inside, I just felt like we're all dying. Like, is no one going to talk about this? Like,
Yeah, exactly. It's so true. It's so true. And I
yeah,
also love the idea of how there can be playfulness within it. There's this deep, intense emotion. It's all welcomed. And that's so beautiful because that's what life should be. And a should is of course a very intense word, but I think life is enriched because you could have the many layers of it. The deaths of people or the pain that you're experiencing, we can't spend our entire life running from pain, and that's so important for us to be open to feeling fully. And even recently, this is the last thing I'll share, but there's a lot of challenges that are happening in a family member's life right now, and she keeps talking about how she needs to be so strong at this time, and it's so important to be strong for her kids and all these things. And I was sharing with her how important it is to also be soft and to be able to be open to that softness and to be able to feel fully, because the more that you're blocking those painful ideas or emotions, that's also showing your child that it's not okay to feel what they're feeling. And so I think that it's really important for us to be able to have that softness and to be able to hold each other in the pain and to love each other fully and to see each other in that way. That's when you can get stronger because you know that you can be your authentic self and step forward into that strength instead of feeling as if it goes back to what I was saying before. How do you step forward instead of like cowering back? And I think to be strong is a way of cowering back because you're not facing what's actually happening at that time. And I think being able to step forward, even in softness, even in tragedy and in pain, that is strength. And I think that that's important for us to not only remember ourselves, but that to pass that on to our children is to be emotionally vulnerable and to be able to be open to those emotions is going to set them up for the success that they are going to be looking for.
I love it. What a
Mm-hmm.
great way to conclude this and
Yeah.
really leave people thinking. So thank you so much, Anto. And
Thank you as
yeah, I
well.
mean, I think come back sometime. There's some other themes I'd like to explore, but I'll give you like a heads up so you can
Okay.
maybe do some
I'm super
like
down.
research. But yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah.
I'll figure out with you how I can get links to all those shows you mentioned so people can like
Mm,
listen to them, read them, watch them, all the ways to kind of dig
absolutely.
into your art. And thank you very much. We'll talk to
Thanks
you
so
soon.
much for having me.
Thank you for tuning in to the conversation I had with Anto today. If you like this style of conversation, if this type of podcast episode is something that really spoke to you, let me know. If there's a topic or even a style that you would like me to explore, I'm open to that too. This is only as effective and as valuable as it is to you, the listener. I want to be here for you. I want to help you find ways to be more curious and comfortable and confident talking about death. So you let me know what that means for you, and I will keep showing up. I hope that you are doing well wherever you are and that you're finding moments of connection with yourself and with others.